Hey guys, tonight we begin with something that'll make your morning coffee taste like liquid luxury. We're diving into a world where alarm clocks don't exist, where electricity is optional, and where your biggest technological decision is whether to use a hand crank or a foot pedal. This is life among the Amish. And let me tell you something, after spending time researching their daily routines, I'm convinced most of us wouldn't make it past breakfast. So before you get comfortable in your climate-controlled room, scrolling on your smartphone, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this. It's 4:30 in the morning, no alarm clock, no snooze button, no checking your phone for notifications. Instead, you wake up because your body has learned to sync with the sun, the seasons, and the rhythm of animals that need feeding. The house is cold, not chilly, cold, because central heating is a luxury you've chosen to live without. You slide out of bed, and your feet hit a wooden floor that's been worn smooth by generations of your family. The floorboards creak, but it's a familiar sound, almost musical. There's no mad rush to check emails or scroll through social media. There's no anxiety about missing something important online. Because in this world, what's important is right in front of you. But here's where it gets interesting. The Amish didn't accidentally stumble into this lifestyle. They chose it, deliberately, methodically. And the more you understand their reasoning, the more you start questioning everything about how the rest of us live. See, the Amish operate on a principle called Gelassenheit. It's a German word that roughly translates to yielding or abandonment. Not abandonment in the sense of giving up, but abandonment of the ego, of the need to be constantly entertained, constantly connected, constantly consuming. It's the conscious choice to live simply so that others may simply live. And yes, they're missing out on the anxiety of checking their phones 150 times a day. They're missing out on the stress of comparing their lives to curated social media posts. They're missing out on the exhaustion of being available 24/7. But what they're gaining is something most of us have lost without even realizing it. Presence, deep, undivided attention to the moment they're actually living in. When an Amish father talks to his child, there's no phone buzzing in his pocket. When an Amish woman tends her garden, she's not mentally planning her next Zoom call. When an Amish family sits down for dinner, the television isn't competing for their attention, because there isn't one. Let me paint you a picture of what an Amish morning actually looks like. By 5 a.m, the entire household is moving. Not rushing, moving. There's a rhythm to it that's been perfected over centuries. The men head to the barn to milk cows and feed livestock. The women start preparing breakfast and getting children ready for the day. Everyone has a role, everyone has purpose, and everyone knows exactly what needs to be done. The breakfast itself is substantial. Fresh eggs from chickens they raised, bacon from pigs they butchered, bread they baked yesterday, milk that came from their cows an hour ago. Nothing processed, nothing artificial, nothing that travelled thousands of miles to reach their table. And here's the kicker, they eat it together. All of them, at the same table, having actual conversations. Try to imagine that for a second. No one's scrolling through their phone, no one's watching the news, no one's distracted by notifications or alerts or the endless digital noise that fills our modern lives. Just family, food, and conversation. When was the last time you experienced something like that? But here's where the Amish lifestyle becomes truly challenging for people like us. After breakfast, the real work begins. And I mean real work. Physical, demanding, purposeful labour that actually produces something tangible. The men might spend the day building a barn, harvesting crops, or crafting furniture. The women might be canning vegetables, sewing clothes, or teaching children. And these aren't just jobs, they're crafts passed down through generations. There's no automation, no shortcuts, no hack to make things easier. If you want a chair, you build it. If you want bread, you bake it. If you want vegetables, you grow them. Everything requires skill, patience, and time. Lots of time. And this is where most of us would start to crack. We're addicted to convenience. We want everything fast, easy, and instant. The Amish have chosen the opposite path. They've embraced difficulty as a teacher, inconvenience as a character builder, and slowness as a form of meditation. Think about your own day for a moment. How much of it is spent doing things that don't really matter? Scrolling through social media, watching videos of people you don't know, buying things you don't need, worrying about problems that exist only in your head. The Amish have eliminated all of that. Every moment of their day has purpose, meaning, direction. Now, I'm not saying their way is perfect. There are real challenges, real limitations, real sacrifices involved in choosing this lifestyle. But there's something profound about a community that has looked at the modern world and consciously chosen to live differently. Not because they don't understand technology, but because they understand it too well. They've seen what it does to families, communities, and individual souls. The Amish don't reject technology out of ignorance. They reject it out of wisdom. They ask hard questions. Will this bring our family closer together or drive us apart? Will this strengthen our community or weaken it? Will this help us live according to our values or compromise them? And here's the thing that really gets me. They're not trying to convert anyone. They're not trying to prove they're superior. They're just quietly living their values, while the rest of us struggle with anxiety, depression, loneliness, and the feeling that something essential is missing from our lives. So the question isn't whether you could survive a day living like an Amish Christian. The question is whether you could survive the peace, the purpose, the presence that comes with it. Because in a world that's constantly trying to speed up, they've chosen to slow down. In a world that's constantly trying to complicate things, they've chosen simplicity. In a world that's constantly trying to divide us, they've chosen community. You've managed to survive breakfast assuming you can call a chunk of dense bread and lukewarm milk a proper meal. Your stomach is marginally satisfied, but your modern sensibilities are already under assault. Because now comes the part that would break most of us before noon. The work. And when I say work, I don't mean checking emails or sitting through a Zoom meeting. I mean the kind of bone-deep, soul-crushing physical labour that makes CrossFit look like a gentle yoga session. Welcome to an Amish workday, where productivity isn't measured in clicks or likes, but in acres ploughed, barns raised, and cows milked. Where your hands will bleed, your back will scream, and your modern notion of work-life balance will die a quick and merciless death. The Amish don't have weekends. They don't have sick days. They don't have the luxury of calling in because they're feeling a bit under the weather. Work begins before sunrise and ends when the last chore is finished, which could be well past sunset, especially during harvest season. And forget about your 8-hour workday. That's a modern invention the Amish never signed up for. If you're a man, you might find yourself behind a plough, walking miles through muddy fields while guiding massive draft horses. These aren't gentle ponies. These are 1,000-pound beasts with minds of their own. And if you lose control, you're not just embarrassed, you're potentially trampled. Your hands, soft from years of keyboard tapping, will blister within the first hour. By noon, they'll be raw and bleeding. By evening, they'll look like ground meat wrapped around bone. The Amish use hand tools for almost everything. Saws that require actual muscle, hammers that weigh more than your laptop, scythes that demand perfect technique unless you want to slice open your own leg. There's no power drill, no nail gun, no hydraulic lift. Just you, the tool, and the job that needs doing. And if you think you can take frequent breaks, think again. The Amish work with a steady, relentless rhythm that would make a metronome jealous. But here's where it gets really interesting. If you're a woman, don't think you're getting off easy. Amish women work just as hard, just differently. You'll be up before dawn, lighting fires, preparing meals for a family of 8 or 10. You'll be churning butter by hand, which sounds quaint until your arms feel like they're going to fall off. You'll be washing clothes in basins with lye soap that burns your skin, hanging laundry that weighs more when wet than you do when dry. And the garden. Oh, the garden. Acres of vegetables that need constant tending. Weeding, watering, harvesting, preserving. You'll be bent over rows of corn and beans for hours, your back screaming, your knees grinding against the earth. The sun will beat down mercilessly, and there's no air-conditioned break room to escape to. Then there's the canning. Mountains of vegetables that need to be processed and preserved for winter. You'll be standing over boiling vats of water, steam scalding your face, lifting heavy jars until your shoulders give out. And this isn't a weekend hobby. This is survival. If the food isn't preserved properly, the family doesn't eat come January. But perhaps the most shocking part isn't the physical demands, it's the pace. The Amish don't work frantically. They work steadily, consistently, hour after hour, day after day. They found a rhythm that's sustainable over decades, not just until the next vacation. There's no rushing to meet an artificial deadline. There's just the work and the understanding that it will be there tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. And here's what would really break most of us. There's no immediate gratification. You don't finish a task and get a notification ding. You don't complete a project and post about it on social media. The reward is simply the work itself, done well, contributing to the survival and prosperity of your family and community. The Amish understand something we've forgotten. That meaningful work isn't about passion or following your dreams. It's about contributing something essential, something that matters, something that would be missed if you didn't do it. A field ploughed feeds people, a barn raised shelters animals, a quilt sewn keeps someone warm. There's no existential crisis about whether your work has meaning. It does, and you can see the results with your own eyes. By the time the sun sets, you're not just tired, you're hollowed out, your hands are destroyed, your back is bent, your clothes are soaked with sweat and dirt. But there's something else, a kind of satisfaction that's completely foreign to our modern experience. The satisfaction of work that's real, necessary, and yours. Tomorrow, you'll do it again. And the day after that. And for the rest of your life, no promotions, no career changes, no retirement plan. Just the work, the land, and the quiet understanding that this is what humans were meant to do. Not optimize conversion rates or manage social media accounts, but grow food, build shelter, and create things that last. You'd hate it, you'd break within a week. But you might also discover something profound about what it means to be human, what it means to work with your hands, and what it means to build a life that's measured not in likes and shares, but in acres harvested and families fed. The Amish have chosen the harder path, deliberately and completely. They've rejected the easy road of modern convenience for something infinitely more demanding, but potentially more meaningful. They've traded comfort for purpose, ease for authenticity, entertainment for engagement with the real world. And as you collapse into your simple bed, every muscle aching, every joint protesting, you might find yourself wondering something unsettling. In our rush toward efficiency and automation, in our quest to eliminate all discomfort and effort from our lives, what exactly have we gained? And more importantly, what have we lost? The Amish know the answer. They've kept what we've thrown away. You've survived the Amish dawn, wrestled with simplicity, and discovered that their version of hard work makes your worst Monday look like a spa day. But now comes the real test, the part that would break most of us before lunch. Because living like an Amish Christian isn't just about rejecting modern conveniences or working with your hands until they bleed. It's about surrendering to a rhythm of life that moves at the speed of seasons, not seconds. Welcome to the Amish afternoon, where time isn't money, patience isn't optional, and everything you thought you knew about productivity gets turned upside down. By now, the sun is climbing higher, and if you're still standing, congratulations. You've made it past the morning chores without calling for an Uber or checking your phone. Because there is no phone. There's no Uber. There's just you, the work, and a community that measures success not in quarterly reports, but in whether the barn gets built before winter. And that's where things get interesting. Because while you were busy missing your morning coffee and wondering how people live without Wi-Fi, something else was happening. Something most of us never experience in our hyper-connected world. You were becoming present. Actually, genuinely present. There's no notification pulling your attention to a social media crisis. No email demanding an immediate response. No calendar reminder buzzing about a meeting that could have been an email. Just the sound of wood being shaped, soil being turned, and your own breathing as you work alongside people who've never known any other way. But don't mistake this simplicity for ease. The Amish afternoon is when the real work begins. This is when you realize that everything in modern life has been designed to save you from exactly this moment. The moment when you have to rely entirely on your own two hands, your own strength, and your own resolve to get things done. Take building, for instance. In your world, construction means power tools, heavy machinery, and workers who show up with trucks full of equipment. In the Amish world, a barn raising is a community event where dozens of families gather to literally raise a structure using nothing but hand tools, human muscle, and generations of inherited knowledge. You'd watch in amazement as men who learned carpentry from their fathers, who learned it from their fathers, fit massive wooden beams, together with a precision that would make modern engineers weep. No blueprints on tablets, no laser levels, just eyes that can read wood grain like text and hands that know exactly how much force to apply without measuring twice. And you? You'd be handed a hammer and told to help. Not because they need you, but because in Amish culture, work is worship, and everyone participates. The problem is, your hands are soft, your back isn't used to this, and that hammer, which looks simple enough, becomes a 20-pound weight after the first hour. Your shoulders would scream, your forearms would burn, and every swing would remind you that the calluses protecting their hands took decades to develop. You'd be nursing blisters before lunch, and by mid-afternoon, you'd understand why the Amish build things to last for generations. Because building anything, even once with hand tools, is an investment in pain that you never want to repeat. But it's not just the physical challenge that would break you, it's the mental shift. In your world, if something breaks, you replace it. If a project takes too long, you hire more people or buy better tools. In the Amish world, you fix what's broken, you work with what you have, and you accept that some things simply take the time they take. This afternoon, patience would test every fibre of your modern conditioning, because you've been trained to expect instant results, immediate feedback, and constant stimulation. The Amish live in a world where planting seeds means waiting months to see if your work mattered, where building furniture means spending days on a single piece, where cooking dinner means starting preparations hours before anyone gets hungry. And there's no rushing any of it. You can't microwave corn into growing faster. You can't download a software update to make a horse plough more efficiently. You can't hack your way through milking a cow or shortcut your way through churning butter. Every task happens at its own natural pace, and fighting that pace only makes everything harder. This is where most of us would crack, not from the work itself, but from the waiting. The methodical, deliberate, utterly unhurried pace of everything. You'd find yourself mentally screaming at soap that takes 20 minutes to make, at bread that requires hours of rising, at laundry that takes half a day to wash, dry, and fold by hand. But here's what you'd discover if you somehow manage to stick with it. Somewhere in the middle of that frustrating, exhausting, impossibly slow afternoon, something would shift. The constant anxiety that buzzes in the background of modern life would start to quiet. The need to check, update, refresh, and multitask would begin to fade. Because when you're focused entirely on the task in front of you, when your hands are busy and your mind isn't being pulled in 12 directions, you enter a different state of being. Not meditation exactly, but something close. A kind of moving prayer where the work itself becomes the point. Not just the means to an end. The Amish call this Gelassenheit, a German word that roughly translates to yielding or abandonment. It's the idea of surrendering your will to something larger than yourself, not giving up, but giving over. Letting go of the need to control every outcome and instead trusting in the process, the community, and the rhythm of life that's been tested over centuries. And you'd need every bit of that surrender, because the afternoon would bring challenges that no amount of modern training prepared you for, like making decisions without Google, solving problems without YouTube tutorials, working through disagreements without lawyers or human resources departments. When the community gathers to discuss whether to plant the South Field in corn or soybeans this year, there's no data analytics dashboard to consult, no market research reports or algorithm recommendations. Just neighbours who've farmed this land for generations, sharing their observations about soil conditions, weather patterns, and what their grandfathers taught them about reading the signs. You'd sit in that circle, listening to a conversation that moves like honey, slow, thick, deliberate, no one interrupting, no one checking their phone, no one rushing to the next meeting, just human beings talking through a decision that will affect their entire community, taking the time to hear every voice and consider every angle. And you'd realise something unsettling. These people, who've never seen a spreadsheet or taken a business course, are making more thoughtful, sustainable decisions than most corporate boardrooms, because they're not optimizing for quarterly profits or next year's growth. They're thinking 7 generations ahead. Every choice is filtered through a simple question. Will this help our children's children live well? Not just survive, but thrive in harmony with the land, with each other, and with their faith. It's a radically different way of thinking about progress, success, and what actually matters. But living by those principles requires sacrifices that would gut most of us. It means accepting that you can't have everything you want exactly when you want it, that some problems don't have quick fixes, that building anything worthwhile, a marriage, a community, a life, takes decades of daily commitment to unglamorous work. The Amish afternoon would confront you with the uncomfortable truth that most of our modern conveniences aren't just saving us time. They're saving us from having to develop patience, persistence, and the deep satisfaction that comes from seeing something through, from beginning to end with your own hands. You'd watch an Amish woman spend 3 hours preparing a meal that could be microwaved in 3 minutes, and at first you'd think she's wasting time. But then you'd taste food that has flavour you'd forgotten existed. You'd see how the slow preparation becomes a meditation, how the kitchen becomes a gathering place, how the meal becomes a celebration of abundance rather than a quick refueling stop. And you'd realise that in trying to save time, we've somehow lost it entirely. We've optimised efficiency so much that we've forgotten what we were trying to be efficient for. The Amish afternoon forces a reckoning with these questions. When the most sophisticated technology in your life is a hand-cranked grain mill, when your entertainment is conversation and your social network is the people within walking distance, you discover what really matters and what you've been filling your life with to avoid discovering what really matters. It's humbling, it's exhausting, and it would probably break you before dinner time. But if you somehow survived it, if you managed to embrace the pace and surrender to the process, you'd understand something that might change how you see everything. That the Amish aren't living in the past, they're living intentionally. Every choice they make, from the clothes they wear to the technology they reject, serves a purpose larger than individual convenience. They've created a way of life that prioritizes relationships over efficiency, sustainability over growth, and spiritual wealth over material accumulation. It's not perfect, it's not for everyone, but it's definitely not backward. As the afternoon sun begins to slant through the barn windows and the day's work starts to wind down, you'd find yourself changed by the experience, quieter, more thoughtful, aware of your hands in a way you'd never been before, connected to the work, to the community, to the rhythm of life that moves with the seasons rather than against them. And you'd probably also find yourself exhausted, sunburned, and missing your air conditioning more than you've ever missed anything in your life. Because living like an Amish Christian isn't just hard work. It's hard work done in community, at nature's pace, with hand tools and horsepower, in service of values that put the soul before the schedule and the eternal before the immediate. The afternoon tests everything you think you know about productivity, efficiency, and what it means to live well. And most of us wouldn't pass that test. The simple truth is this: you wouldn't last a day as an Amish Christian. Not because you lack faith or determination, but because their way of life demands something most of us have forgotten how to give: complete surrender to a rhythm older than electricity, deeper than convenience, and more demanding than any modern challenge you've ever faced. Before we go further, I need you to understand something. This isn't about romanticizing or criticizing the Amish way of life. This is about recognizing the profound gap between their daily reality and ours. It's about understanding what we've gained in our modern world, and perhaps more importantly, what we've lost. Let's start with the most basic challenge: waking up in an Amish household. Your day begins not with an alarm clock or smartphone notification, but with the natural rhythm of dawn. There's no electricity to ease you into consciousness, no coffee maker brewing your morning fuel, no hot shower to wash away the grogginess. You rise when the sun rises because that's when work begins, and work in an Amish community isn't a job. It's a calling that demands every ounce of your physical and spiritual energy. The Amish don't wake up and check their phones. They don't scroll through social media or catch up on overnight news. They wake up and immediately turn their thoughts to God, to family, and to the work that sustains their community. This isn't just a lifestyle choice, it's a spiritual discipline that most of us have never experienced in its fullness. Your morning routine would be unlike anything you've ever experienced. There's no rushing to beat traffic or grabbing breakfast on the go. Instead, you'd participate in a careful, deliberate preparation for the day. Family prayer isn't optional. It's the foundation upon which everything else is built. And this isn't a quick blessing before eating. This is a genuine communion with the divine that sets the tone for every decision, every interaction, every moment that follows. The breakfast itself would humble you. Simple, plain food prepared with care, but without the variety or convenience you're accustomed to. No exotic fruits flown in from distant countries. No complex flavors designed to stimulate your palate. Just nourishing food that connects you to the land, to the seasons, and to the hands that prepared it. Even this basic meal carries spiritual weight. Gratitude isn't just spoken, it's felt deeply for every bite. But the real shock would come when work begins. Amish work isn't just physical labor, it's a form of worship. Whether you're working in the fields, crafting furniture, or maintaining the household, every task is performed with the understanding that you're serving God through service to your community. There are no shortcuts, no power tools to ease the burden, no machinery to multiply your efforts. Just your hands, your back, your endurance, and your faith. The physical demands alone would overwhelm most modern people. We've grown accustomed to climate-controlled environments, ergonomic tools, and mechanized assistance for even basic tasks. In an Amish community, you discover muscles you forgot you had, and develop calluses in places that have known only softness. Your body would ache in ways that no amount of modern fitness training could have prepared you for. But the physical challenge pales in comparison to the mental adjustment. We're addicted to stimulation, to constant input, entertainment, and distraction. The Amish live in what most of us would consider profound silence. No music streaming in the background, no podcasts to pass the time, no television to unwind with in the evening. Just the sounds of nature, of work being done, of human voices engaged in meaningful conversation. This silence isn't empty, it's full of presence, full of awareness, full of the kind of deep listening that most of us have forgotten how to do. In this silence, you'd be forced to confront your own thoughts, your own spiritual condition, your own relationship with God and community in ways that constant distraction usually prevents. The Amish concept of community would challenge everything you think you know about independence and self-reliance. In their world, individual desires are always subordinate to community needs. You don't make decisions based solely on personal preference or convenience. Every choice is filtered through its impact on the family, the church, and the broader community. This isn't oppression, it's a conscious choice to prioritize collective well-being over individual autonomy. This community orientation extends to every aspect of life. When someone needs help, the entire community responds. When someone faces hardship, it becomes everyone's concern. When decisions need to be made, they're made collectively through careful deliberation and prayer. There are no lone wolves in Amish society, no rugged individualists charting their own course. Everyone is connected, everyone is accountable, everyone is responsible for everyone else's spiritual and physical welfare. The technology gap would be jarring beyond description. We've become so dependent on digital tools that we've forgotten how to function without them. No GPS to navigate, no Google to answer questions, no smartphones to stay connected with distant friends and family. No electric lights to extend the day, no refrigeration to preserve food, no washing machines to handle laundry. Every task that technology has simplified for us becomes a complex, time-consuming process requiring skill, patience, and physical effort. But here's what might surprise you. The Amish aren't living in technological poverty. They've made deliberate choices about which technologies to embrace and which to reject based on how those technologies impact their community life and spiritual development. They've chosen slower over faster, simpler over more complex, communal over individual. These aren't backward people clinging to outdated ways. They're thoughtful people who've prioritized different values than mainstream society. The spiritual discipline required for Amish life would be the greatest challenge of all. Their faith isn't compartmentalized into Sunday mornings or moments of crisis. It's woven into every moment, every decision, every relationship. Prayer isn't something you do, it's something you live. Scripture isn't something you read, it's something you embody. God isn't someone you believe in, God is someone you surrender to completely. This surrender extends to accepting hardship as part of God's plan, finding joy in simplicity rather than accumulation, and measuring success not by personal achievement, but by faithfulness to community and calling. The Amish practice a form of Christianity that most modern believers would find impossibly demanding because it requires giving up so much of what we consider essential to happiness and fulfillment. The pace of life would initially feel impossibly slow, then gradually reveal its wisdom. Everything takes longer when you're doing it by hand, without mechanical assistance, with careful attention to quality rather than speed. But this slower pace creates space for reflection, for conversation, for genuine relationship. It creates space for noticing things that blur past when you're moving at modern speed, the changing seasons, the needs of neighbours, the movements of your own soul. Meals would become sacred time rather than necessary interruptions. Without televisions or devices to distract, families actually talk to each other. They share not just food, but stories, concerns, plans, and dreams. Children aren't entertained by screens. They're engaged by adults who have time and attention to offer. Elders aren't marginalized or forgotten. They're honored as sources of wisdom and continuity. The evenings would challenge your relationship with entertainment and leisure. No Netflix to binge, no social media to scroll, no video games to play. Instead, you'd discover the lost arts of conversation, reading, simple crafts, and early bedtime. You'd learn to find satisfaction in quiet activities that engage your hands and mind without overstimulating your senses. The seasonal rhythms would gradually recalibrate your internal clock. Instead of living in artificial environments that remain constant year-round, you'd experience the full cycle of planting and harvest, of abundance and scarcity, of long summer days and early winter nights. Your body and spirit would learn to flow with natural patterns that connect you to the earth and to the God who made it. But perhaps the most challenging aspect would be learning to live without the constant validation and stimulation that modern life provides. No likes on social media, no text messages from friends, no email confirmations of your importance. Your sense of worth would have to come from different sources, from the quality of your work, from your relationships with family and community, from your spiritual development, from your service to others. The Amish understand something we've forgotten, that limitations can be liberating. By choosing to live within constraints, technological, social, and spiritual, they've created space for things that unlimited choice often crowds out. They've chosen depth over breadth, quality over quantity, presence over productivity. Their concept of Gelassenheit, yielding or abandonment to God's will, would require dismantling most of our assumptions about personal autonomy and self-determination. It means accepting that your life isn't your own to shape according to your desires. It means trusting that God's plan, even when it involves hardship or limitation, is better than your own plans. It means finding peace in surrender rather than in control. This doesn't mean passive resignation. The Amish work incredibly hard, make careful decisions, and take responsibility for their communities, but they do all of this within a framework of divine submission that most modern people would find suffocating. They've learnt to find freedom within obedience, joy within constraint, abundance within simplicity. The social structure would challenge every assumption about equality and individual rights that modern society takes for granted. Amish communities are hierarchical, with clear roles and expectations based on age, gender, and spiritual maturity. This isn't oppression, it's order based on their understanding of biblical principles and community needs. But it would require setting aside many of the freedoms and choices that we consider fundamental to human dignity. Women have different roles than men. Children are expected to obey their parents without question, and individual preferences are subordinated to community standards. This structure provides stability and clarity, but it also requires accepting your place within a system that you didn't choose and can't easily change. The Amish relationship with the broader world would force you to reconsider your own entanglements with modern society. They live alongside mainstream culture without being absorbed by it. They interact with the outside world for business and necessary services while maintaining their distinct identity and values. This requires constant discernment about which influences to accept and which to reject. You discover how difficult it is to live differently when the surrounding culture pulls constantly in other directions. Every trip to town, every interaction with non-Amish neighbours, every exposure to modern conveniences would present temptations to abandon the harder path for easier alternatives. The Amish have developed remarkable spiritual and social disciplines to maintain their distinctive way of life in the face of constant pressure to conform. The educational approach would challenge everything you think you know about learning and development. Amish children attend school only through 8th grade, after which they begin learning practical skills through hands-on experience. There's no college preparation, no standardized testing, no competition for academic achievement. Instead, education focuses on basic literacy, practical skills, and spiritual formation. This might seem limiting until you realize that Amish communities produce remarkably capable, well-adjusted adults who can build houses, run businesses, maintain complex agricultural operations, and navigate social relationships with wisdom and grace. They've proven that extensive formal education isn't necessary for meaningful, productive, fulfilling lives. The approach to conflict resolution would require learning entirely new ways of handling disagreement and disputes. The Amish practice restorative rather than punitive justice. When someone causes harm, the focus is on repairing relationships and addressing underlying problems rather than on punishment. This requires humility, forgiveness, and a commitment to community healing that most of us have never experienced. Their approach to mental health and emotional well-being emphasizes community support, spiritual practices, and practical action rather than individual therapy or pharmaceutical intervention. This doesn't mean they ignore psychological suffering, but they address it through different means, through prayer, through community support, through meaningful work, through spiritual counseling from elders and ministers. The Amish understanding of success would require completely redefining your goals and aspirations. Success isn't measured by wealth accumulation, career advancement, or public recognition. It's measured by faithfulness to God, service to community, and the development of character. The most successful person in an Amish community might be someone who consistently helps neighbours, raises faithful children, and maintains integrity in all dealings. This alternative definition of success creates different motivations and satisfactions. Instead of competing with others for limited rewards, you'd be collaborating with others for shared well-being. Instead of pursuing individual achievement, you'd be contributing to collective flourishing. Instead of accumulating possessions, you'd be developing relationships and spiritual maturity. The Amish approach to time would revolutionize your relationship with productivity and efficiency. They don't rush. They don't multitask. They don't optimize every moment for maximum output. Instead, they work steadily, carefully, with attention to quality rather than speed. They take time for conversation, for reflection, for appreciation of their work and surroundings. This slower pace initially feels inefficient until you realize how much more present and engaged you become when you're not constantly rushing to the next task. Quality improves when you're not cutting corners to save time. Relationships deepen when you're not distracted by competing priorities. Spiritual awareness increases when you're not constantly stimulated and overscheduled. Their relationship with suffering and hardship would challenge modern assumptions about comfort and ease. The Amish don't expect life to be easy or pleasant. They accept hardship as part of the human condition and as opportunities for spiritual growth. They don't seek to eliminate all discomfort or to escape from difficult circumstances. Instead, they try to respond to hardship with faith, patience, and mutual support. This doesn't mean they're passive in the face of problems or that they don't work to improve their conditions. But they don't assume that comfort and convenience are rights, or that suffering is always something to be avoided. They've learnt to find meaning and even joy in circumstances that most modern people would consider intolerable. The Amish understanding of stewardship would transform your relationship with the environment and with material possessions. They see themselves as caretakers rather than owners of the resources they use. They practice sustainable agriculture, not because it's trendy, but because they believe they're accountable to God for how they treat the land. They avoid waste not because they're poor, but because they believe excess consumption is spiritually harmful. This stewardship ethic extends to their approach to technology, to community resources, to their relationships with each other. They practice voluntary simplicity, not as deprivation, but as spiritual discipline. Their approach to conflict with the outside world would require learning new ways of responding to hostility and misunderstanding. The Amish are pacifists who refuse to use violence even in self-defense. They respond to persecution with patience and forgiveness rather than retaliation. They've maintained their distinctive way of life, not through aggressive defense of their rights, but through quiet consistency and peaceful resistance. This pacifist stance extends beyond physical violence to all forms of coercion and aggression. They don't sue in court, they don't engage in political activism, they don't fight back when they're treated unfairly. Instead, they trust God to protect them and work for justice through prayer, through example, and through patient endurance. The economic system would challenge every assumption about capitalism, competition, and individual wealth accumulation. Amish communities practice mutual aid rather than individual accumulation. When someone faces financial hardship, the community responds collectively. When someone needs help with a large project, neighbours contribute labour and materials without expectation of payment. This economic cooperation isn't socialism or communalism. Individual families own their own farms and businesses, but it's an economy embedded in relationships and spiritual values rather than purely market forces. Success is shared, hardship is borne collectively, and economic decisions are made with community impact in mind. The Amish approach to aging and death would require confronting mortality and limitation in ways that modern culture usually avoids. Elders aren't segregated in nursing homes, but remain integrated in family and community life. Death isn't hidden or medicalized, but faced with faith and community support. The dying are surrounded by family, cared for at home, and helped to prepare spiritually for their transition. This direct engagement with aging and death creates a different relationship with time and priorities. When you regularly witness the reality of human mortality, you're less likely to waste time on trivial pursuits. When you see how quickly life passes, you're more motivated to invest in relationships and spiritual development rather than temporary pleasures or achievements. Their child-rearing practices would challenge modern approaches to parenting and child development. Amish children are raised with clear expectations, consistent discipline, and genuine responsibility from an early age. They're not entertained or indulged, but are expected to contribute to family and community well-being according to their abilities. This doesn't mean Amish children are unhappy or oppressed. They grow up with security, belonging, and purpose that many modern children lack. They know their place in the family and community. They understand their responsibilities and privileges, and they develop practical skills and spiritual foundations that serve them throughout life. The Amish understanding of individual identity would require dismantling most modern assumptions about self-expression and personal authenticity. Individual identity is understood in relationship to God, family, and community rather than as something to be discovered or created independently. You don't find yourself, you lose yourself in service to something greater. This doesn't eliminate individuality, but channels it in particular directions. Each person has unique gifts and contributions to make, but these are developed and expressed within community structures and spiritual frameworks. Personal fulfillment comes through faithfulness to your calling, rather than through self-actualization or personal achievement. As the day winds down in an Amish household, you'd experience evening rhythms that most of us have forgotten. Without electric lights, the day naturally ends when the sun sets. Families gather for evening prayers, for simple activities, for conversation that isn't competing with screens or notifications. Children learn songs and stories that connect them to their heritage. Adults discuss the day's work and plan for tomorrow's tasks. The transition to sleep would be gradual and natural, rather than the abrupt shift from stimulation to rest that characterizes modern bedtime routines. Your body would learn to follow circadian rhythms that align with natural light cycles. Your mind would settle into quietness without the artificial stimulation of late-night entertainment. But here's what you'd gradually discover. This way of life that initially seems impossibly restrictive actually creates space for freedoms that most of us have lost. Freedom from the anxiety of endless choice. Freedom from the pressure to constantly achieve and accumulate. Freedom from the isolation that comes with excessive individualism. Freedom from the spiritual emptiness that often accompanies material abundance. The Amish have chosen a path that prioritizes different values than mainstream culture. They've chosen community over autonomy, simplicity over complexity, spiritual development over material advancement, presence over productivity. These choices require sacrifice, but they also create possibilities that unlimited freedom often eliminates. You wouldn't last a day living like an Amish Christian because their way of life demands a complete reorientation of priorities, values, and daily practices. It requires giving up conveniences and freedoms that most of us consider essential. It requires accepting limitations and constraints that seem unbearable to people raised with unlimited options. But perhaps that's exactly why their example is so important. In a world that often feels frantic, disconnected, and spiritually empty, the Amish offer an alternative vision of human flourishing. They've proven that it's possible to live with less technology and more community, with fewer choices and deeper satisfaction, with greater constraint and profound freedom. Their way of life isn't for everyone, and they don't expect it to be. But their example challenges us to examine our own assumptions about what makes life meaningful and fulfilling. They force us to ask difficult questions about the price we pay for our conveniences, the spiritual cost of our freedoms, and the human consequences of our technological dependencies. Whether or not you could adapt to their lifestyle, the Amish offer valuable lessons about the relationship between limitation and liberation, between individual desires and community needs, between temporal concerns and eternal values. They've maintained for centuries a way of life that prioritizes what they believe matters most, and they've done so with remarkable consistency, integrity, and joy. In the end, the question isn't really whether you could survive a day in an Amish community. The question is whether their example might inspire you to examine your own life with fresh eyes, to consider what you've gained and what you've lost in the pursuit of modern comfort and convenience, and to ask what changes might bring your own life into better alignment with your deepest values and highest aspirations. The Amish way of life stands as a testament to the possibility of choosing a different path, of prioritizing spiritual and communal values over individual convenience, of finding abundance in simplicity and freedom in faithful service. Based on the reference materials you've provided, I'll create a Part 1 script that emulates the tone based on the reference scripts you, Flow, Vocabulary, and Vernve provided. I'll create Acula of these transcripts, while a script about Am focusing on the Amish Christian lifestyle topic. Here's the script Ish Christian Life that emulates their tone. Flow. Hey guys, tonight we begin vocabulary and vernacular, while with something that'll make your focusing on the unique topic. Morning coffee routine look like rocket. Here's Part 1, Science. The brutal beautiful. Hey guys, tonight, an absolutely unforgiving world of Ol, we begin with something that order Amish Christianity. We're talking about a will absolutely shatter your modern life, so stripped down, so intent assumptions about comfort, convenience, and what ishly difficult that your smartphone actually means to survive. We're diving deep into the world of Amish Christian. Withdrawal would be the least of your problems. Before life, where your smartphone is us, we dive into this world of less. Your car is hand-hewn everything and zero forbidden, and a single day shortcuts. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But without electricity isn't a power outage. It's Tuesday only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And forget everything you think you know about let me know in the comments where simple living. The truth you're tuning in from, Anne, is you probably wouldn't last 12 what time it is for you. 8 hours. So before you's always fascinating to see who get comfortable in your climate-controlled room, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that, only if you genuinely enjoy soft background hum and let's what I do here. And ease into tonight's journey together, let me know in the comments where. Picture this. D, what time it is for you. No alarm clock, no SNs always fascinating to see whose button, no gentle wake-up sounds from your phone. Just joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe your internal clock, and the absolute certainty that if you're not up, turn on a fan for that before the rooster. Your already soft background hum, and let's behind. Welcome to day one of your Amish life ease into tonight's journey, where every single convenience, you together. 30 in the morning. Not because your alarm went, not because they can't afford it. Off, because there is. Not because they don't understand technology, but because they've no alarm. The rooster is your made a conscious choice. That timekeeper, and he doesn't believe in a sun would break most of us before ooze buttons. There's no stumbling to the coffee maker, because there isn't one. No checking your phone because you don't have one. No breakfast. You roll out of bed. Not your memory foam mattress. Not your flipping a light switch because electricity, adjustable base with massage settings is forbidden. You're a straw about to enter a world where every stuffed tick on a single convenience you take for granted has wooden frame that creaks like a ship being deliberately removed. Not in a storm. The room is cold, innerly cold. Because central welcome to Amish life heating is a modern convenience that stands, where the 19th century isn't between you and God's intended history, it's daily struggle. Your breath fogs in reality, and before you start the air as you thumb romanticising this aspal for clothes that was some peaceful, pastoral paradise, let me stop you right there. This hand-sewn, hand-washed, and hung to dry by isn't a weekend camping the same hands that'll trip or a digital detox retreat. This is a complete milk the cows before rejection of modernity that demands physical endurance, mental discipline. Most people check their first notification. There's no bathroom and spiritual commitment that attach to your bedroom. No ends would break most of us before breakfast. The Amwits with heated floors and rainfallish aren't just living showerheads. They're without technology. Their living's an outhouse, in according to a religious doctrine called Ordnung, a January, in Pennsylvania, with set of unwritten rules that govern half-moon carved in urns, everything from the width of the door and a S-hat brim to the number ears catalogue for toilet paper, and of pleats in your dress. These aren't suggestions, yes, you'll be making. They're commandments end for that walk in the dark, through said by the entire community. Step out of line, and you snow that hasn't been Pell don't just get a stern talking to. Completely cut off from everyone. But here's where it gets interesting. You've ever known, don't stumble to this, including your own family. But here's what makes this even routine cursing the cold or more intense. The Amish population dreading the day. You've has doubled every 20 years for the past been raised to see this as sacred. Every discomfort